Hey, my name is Joey Lazar. I'm the developer of Dead Upon Us. I've been programming and doing game design for over 10 years now. This is the first episode of the Dead Upon Us DevBlog, which is a deep dive behind the scenes series all about the game and its development. In today's introduction episode, we're going to be going over 5 different topics. What is Dead Upon Us? The inspiration, lore, the world, and then finally, we're going to end with the roadmap. Dead Upon Us is the next generation zombie game. I've always wanted to be put into the shoes of someone literally dropped into the apocalypse and see if I was able to survive or maybe even prosper. In Dead Upon Us, you're first dropped into a world that's already a few years into the apocalypse. Your character already knows a thing or two about surviving. Facing zombies is not something that's new to you. However, how you've survived up until this moment is unique to each character. But either way, you are now faced with starting fresh. You'll begin with a few random supplies, and from there, you will need to explore and loot whatever you can find. Food and water are key resources, especially early on when you have no way of growing food or collecting water. Once you've scavenged long enough and you've collected enough resources, you can start building. You can either take over an existing structure or you can build something new and start entirely from scratch. It's entirely up to you. Once you've created a safe haven, you'll be able to start recruiting other survivors. You might find somebody who needs to be rescued, or you might meet them through other means, like sending out a radio signal. However you find these people, each survivor will have a different skill set and also have different professions from their past lives. Some are very useful, like doctors, and others maybe not so much, but everyone plays their part. Assigning jobs is an essential part in being a leader. Managing things like defenses is also a vital part of leading a community. Assigning guards, lookouts, or even creating evacuation plans for when the worst happens are all things you'll need to consider. Governing your people will also mean setting laws and rules and the punishments that go along with them. You'll also have to deal with the most basic needs of your people. Not only making sure food and water are satisfied, but even making sure that your people are comfortable. Giving them better living standards like showers, toilets, entertainment. These are all parts of being a leader. I draw a lot of inspiration from Fallout 4. Fallout games in general place you in a post-apocalyptic world. You might start off with very little to nothing, but you're able to grow, progress, explore, take on insane enemies. You end up turning into this badass character. And that's something that I really want you to feel in Dead Upon Us. I want you to feel this experience of exploring the wasteland. Your character is capable. Your character has survived in the apocalypse for a couple of years at this point. You're not supposed to be somebody who's just going into the apocalypse. You're supposed to be somebody who has actually done this a lot at this point. You've killed many zombies. Killing 40 to 50 zombies a day shouldn't be a big deal for your character. Fallout games also have an insane lore that is so deep and rich that you could spend weeks diving into the backstories of the world. I really take a lot of inspiration for Dead Upon Us. I want you to want to learn more about the world that Dead Upon Us takes place in. I have created a lot of backstory into how the apocalypse happened. How did the infection get created? Where did it come from? How did we get to this point? What other things in this universe are different than in our universe? And in Dead Upon Us, there is a lot of differences. Vietnam was different in Dead Upon Us than it is place in our universe, which is a big thing. And that's just like what you experience in Fallout, which is our universe, but not really. Fallout big on nuclear tech. In Dead Upon Us, biological war was a thing. But even prior to that point, a lot of bio warfare was going on, and this is something you'll be able to learn in the game. So Fallout's deep dive experience into the lore, there's this world that feels so real and rich that you actually feel like you're a part of this world when you're playing. You're actually this survivor in this nuclear wasteland. Escape from Tarkov is probably one of the most immersive looting and immersive shooter games. The gunplay in this game is insane. In Tarkov, you really have to be strategic about everything you do, what you take into the raids. How much ammo am I going to bring with me this time? Am I going to die right away? Am I going to lose all of this the second I get in there? How much effort do I put into what I'm bringing in this time? And then you get into the raid, you're worrying about, do I take this? Do I take that? Do I swap this for that? You probably drop things that are worth a bunch of money to pick up something that's worth nothing. We've all done it. But when you're new to the game, you really have this experience of panic. But the game in general makes you think about how you loot, think about what you're going to take, how you're going to take it, to optimize your space, rotate things, move them around, fit things into each other, put 12 backpacks into each other. Tarkov really makes you think of the possibilities with looting. Sometimes you're sitting there for multiple minutes on end, just figuring out how you're taking your loot out of this place. The way using the weapons in the game feels is very unique. It's hard to find. On top of that, they have insane customization. You can create some really interesting builds. In Dead Upon Us, I plan to have a weapon customization system very similar, allowing you to change out parts on weapons. It's going to be much more unique to each person. Last thing I wanted to mention about Tarkov is its tactical nature. In Tarkov, you have to play slow. When you're playing against another player, you have to stop and listen, move slow, and figure out where your target is, make quiet and precise movements. In Dead Upon Us, I really want to have a very similar focus on the way stealth is. I want each of your movements to be tactical. The zombies, they'll hear you when you make sounds. If you step on glass, that's something that can trigger zombies that are close enough to you. And the way you approach every situation, I want you to have a similar tactical, take it slow, be smart kind of mentality. My third inspiration is going to be Walking Dead, which obviously you might be able to see as it is a zombie show, how I got inspiration from that. The Walking Dead has a really good way of making it about the people and not as much about the zombies. There's a lot of internal and external problems that the group is experiencing, even from the beginning. Rick and Shane fighting over Rick's wife. That best friendship turns into an enemy, and then Rick kills Shane. They're constantly faced with these person-on-person issues and the effects of the apocalypse on a person. It's also about these difficult choices that are made. This is something that the game really picks up well on. The game forces you to have to make these decisions. A lot of the time they're quick decisions that you only have a few seconds to decide on, and they can mean a character dying or your character dying, and it could potentially change the entire story or end the story. I want you to have to decide on big things that can be groundbreaking for not only your character, but the characters that are following you, the community that you're establishing in this apocalypse. Someone could be a criminal or someone could hurt somebody in the community. And the question is, what do you do in these situations? Do you look the other way to benefit yourself and your community and sacrifice another? Do you punish this person? How do you do it? Do you kill them? Do you banish them? Do you throw them in a jail? These are things that Dead Upon Us is going to force you to decide on, because you're going to be leading this group and creating this community. And these are things you're going to have to think about. And again, just to emphasize, Walking Dead really makes you think about the people. And that's something that I really want to take away from. In Vietnam, the US government ended up turning to this company who promised to have a weapon that could take on the Viet Cong. They said that the tunnels would be no problem. It would have no issue eliminating all of the threats, which later was discovered is actually a weaker form of the zombie virus. So they unleash zombies into Vietnam, but this virus would kill the host in about 5 to 7 days, which means that the spread would be limited and then the zombies would be gone, no more. They covered this up, but of course it got leaked around the world. All the other countries found out that the US used a bioweapon in this war, and they did not like that. This ended up sparking a worldwide, basically Cold War, in which every major country was creating these biological weapons. And many of them were deployed around the world, and a lot of innocent people died. It became a world where energy drinks like Immunity Max were created to make a nonchalant way of giving the public immunity enhancers. And it did advertise, immunity boost, but it was made to be an energy drink. Kids loved it. It was a way of getting kids to boost their immune system to help make them safer during a world war revolving around biological weapons. Once the war was over, a lot of laws and regulations were made on all of these R&D companies. So companies like the Paradise Corporation had to change. They turned into a commercial industry and really backed away from the biological aspect. The world ended up falling into this state of peace where everyone thought war is bad, we have lost too many people, it's time to be different, move forward. All of a sudden, a terrorist group tactically gasses major cities all around the world with a modified version of the virus that's more aggressive, doesn't have that death timer, so the host will just stay alive and keep spreading the virus until it's killed. Of course, laws and regulations all around the world have been put into place to lower the ability of biological research, which means that the world essentially was not equipped for this kind of attack. As much as it was preventing weapons from being created, it actually made it so that the world wasn't prepared if something like this did end up happening. The government very quickly turned to the Paradise Corporation, not even realizing that they were the ones that actually created this virus. One of the company founders was convinced they could cure this because they made it. So he had a cocky, selfish scheme to make more money and to gain more power. After this was over, he's like, we're going to get back to who we used to be. We're going to be a strong company. We're going to take back the world. But then all of a sudden, it turns out the Paradise Corporation was not equipped to deal with this, and they were not capable of curing the virus. The mutations were far too extreme, and they came to the conclusion that once a host turned, it was over. That person was dead. There was no bringing them back. The only thing that could be done is killing the host. And thus, the world fell. Now this brings us to present day, dead upon us. After the outbreak, it's been years since it's happened, and a lot of people have managed to fight back against the dead. Some even prosper. There's two major factions that you're going to experience in Dead Upon Us. The United Colonies of America is one of the major ones, which consists of remnants of state government, military, people who believe in the old world and maintaining the old government. This is a very democratic people. They even still receive messages sent from the president himself. The other major faction is the remnants of the Paradise Corporation, known as the Paradise Initiative. Essentially, after failing to cure the virus, the founder sealed his company tower, which is basically a fortress. It even has walls surrounding it. He protected himself and those who worked for him. Essentially, over the years, he used his speech and manipulation to create a cult-like following and his group controls a large portion of Philadelphia because they locked the tower away so early on, and this was this research development company. They have advanced technologies, including aircraft, and this group is not known for being very good people, and they look at other groups based purely on what they can contribute to the initiative. These two factions are at war, and whether you get involved is entirely up to you. Joining either side, how you help them, what decisions you make will affect the entire world, and not participating means that the fates will decide what happens. One of the unique parts, the story of Dead Upon Us, is that many of the events are going to be time-based, which means whether the player is there or not, they're happening. So missing major events is going to be an inevitable part of the game for you the first time you play, because a lot of the time you don't know something was happening until you hear from another character or another faction in the game that these things took place. So you wouldn't know to go help these people until it's already happened. And then in your next gameplay, you're able to stop these things from happening or make a change. Perfect example would be a horde slaughtering a colony that was not able to defend themselves. In your next gameplay, you might be able to go to this colony, warn them that this horde is on the way, and save all of these people, thus completely changing the storyline. And this is a really important part of the game for me, is creating this replayability. I want every character to experience the world differently and have a completely different story than the last. Basically, I've created all of the base gameplay elements. I've also created a bunch of in-game tools to assist me with development. Things like item creator tool, a tool for making new weapons, for making new buildable objects, a bunch of stuff. I've basically set myself up to have this base platform that I can keep adding content to it until we finally have the final game. And the way that I separate a lot of these things are by prioritizing the main elements that make the game and also the quality of life elements. Best example of this is multiplayer is one of the priority elements, things that need to get done as soon as possible. You know, having your friends join you in the game, exploring together, that is going to be one of the most important parts of the game, and is something that I really want. And a quality of life element could be something like lockpicking, something that is going to make the game more fun, add to the game in general, but it's not a vital part of the game, and you can still have fun playing the game. Multiplayer, on the other hand, is pretty important, as you're gonna want to play with your friends, and the sooner that that's in the game, the better. From here, the goal is to get the demo out, which is the most basic version of the game, which is meant to give everyone a feel of what it is now and give an impression for what it's going to be like. It's also going to give me a lot of performance information, telling me how well it's working on different people's computers. It's also going to help me start to get really important feedback from all of you, which is going to help me shape the game into the greatest version of itself. Creating a detailed roadmap is something that is really important, and the future isn't that far away. Things like Steam are going to be a major part for us because it's going to give us not only early access for everybody, it's also important because Steam API, this is going to allow servers to be a thing. It's going to change the way that multiplayer works. It's also going to make it so that we're able to have updates go right to you versus having to manually download, which is very likely what it's going to be like early on. So there's a lot of benefits that we're going to get from going to Steam. Once on Steam, the game is just going to be continually updated until we finally have our full game. One of the biggest things I have to say is that I refuse to be one of those games that stays early access. There is a completion point for Dead Upon Us. It is not going to take forever for us to get there. That doesn't mean that once we get there that I'm going to stop adding to the game and that there will be no new content. Once the game has hit this point of completion, I might end up adding something later on. But to be clear, a completed Dead Upon Us will have an expansive open world, the ability to create enormous colonies, establish governments, care for your people, deal with factions, wars, an entire world story quest line with different impactful decisions, an insane amount of created and randomly generated side quests, character progression through a leveling system, skills, perks, and basically the greatest zombie survival game